Okay, so now we've gone through the arbitrage opportunities, we've talked about the strategies. Does anybody have any questions about the strategies? Good. So now we're going to talk about pre-positioning. This is pretty simple. If you're looking to have people interested in talking to you, what do you think the best positioning would be as you approach somebody? Give them some value. Help them. Give them some value. Great. If you were going to put, say, a title on who you were, like what you do, what do you think would be the best title to have if you could pick any one you wanted when you're buying companies?
Giver.
Giver? Yeah, that's good. What do they want usually? What does every company usually want? Money, right? So who has money? Investors, right? So to me, be the thing they want. Don't go in saying I'm a buyer or I'm an entrepreneur even. Say I'm an investor. Because you are. You might invest with something other than cash, but you are an investor. You might invest with cash, right? You never know. So I would strongly suggest that you immediately, if you perceive yourself to be an investor and want to buy companies, that you modify your social media profiles to say that you are. If you look at my Twitter or my LinkedIn or my Instagram or my Facebook, you will see I list myself as an investor every single place. That's really smart because not because a bunch of people you're going to put investor on your thing and you're suddenly going to have 1,000 companies that come to you, but when you're talking to people and they go to check you out, you want to be congruent with what you say you are online and offline. So I think it would be really smart, whatever you do, to also include investor in your social titles. Position yourself as an investor when you're talking to companies, and you'll never run out of people to talk to. So let's talk about the ideal size of a company. I mentioned that private equity companies want larger deals because they don't want to waste their time with smaller deals that take the same amount of money and time to do. So we want to think about that for our businesses too. And so the size of the business to buy, this is the annual sales full-time for full-time U.S. business owners. The size that we want to really focus on are the top 13%. And so that's businesses that are doing between 500,000 and $1 million, which represent 4% of total businesses, and businesses that are doing more than $1 million, which represent 9% of total businesses. And ideally, that's sales between 5 and 30 million is kind of the sweet spot I have found. You might find different, and 5 to 100 employees. Why would I only want companies that have some number of employees? And I really like 10 or more. Means the owner's not working, means they have managed, right? At least, even if the owner's there now, there's a good chance if they've got 10 employees, there's somebody that knows what's going on that we can bump up.
There's some continuity of that business operation.
Exactly, yeah, and when the owner leaves, there's continuity, exactly. Okay, so that's about 728,000 businesses that fall into that sweet spot for us, so there's no shortage, okay? So if you're concerned about that, if we all run out tomorrow and buy 1,000 businesses, we're still going to be okay, okay? So what type of business should we buy? I think I'm going to show you the general way if you're not looking within your industry first, and then we're going to go down narrower and narrower to in your industry down to specific assets you might buy. So for general research first, find a public company in your current industry, or if you don't have somebody that's public that you can identify easily, find a business that's similar. Then Google the company name and acquisitions. Take a look at the list of all of those acquisitions, and then make notes of the types of companies. Because the very first thing we want to do is know what type of company should I buy. Vinny Fisher, who is one of our War Room members who has a company called Fully Accountable, came to me at the last meeting and said, man, I'm ready to do these acquisitions. And Vinny was an M&A lawyer. And he said, but I've never bought a company myself. I don't know what kind of companies I should buy for this. And so we went and did a little bit of research, which I'll show you here. And and you'll see what we came up with. So then make a list of the types of companies that the public company acquired that might make sense for you, because it might be buying things that you don't care about. So for accounting, for Vinny, we Google publicly held plus the category, so publicly held accounting firm, and it turns out that the big 4 firms are not public. They're privately held still. So if you don't find a publicly held company, then Google largest in the category. So largest accounting firm, we find that the big 4 is Deloitte, Ernst & Young, KPMG, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. Fantastic. Then we identify the key comps to buy. So once you find the company, right, then review the list of their acquisitions. So Deloitte acquisitions is what I've Googled now. And it says growth through acquisition. Yay, Deloitte's going to actually tell us on their own site. So it tells you the investment focus. Currently, we're focused on the following market areas, and we're looking for merger and acquisition opportunities. Cool. So if you're thinking about selling, also a good thing to do, right? The nice thing to think about is that the exit is very similar to the buy. You're going to do a lot of the same kind of research, right? So they say strategic alignment. Each of our acquisitions must meet the strategic fit stuff, and they tell you kind of what it is. And then they say, contact us, and here's somebody if you want to talk to us about this. Kind of cool. And by the way, now we know corporate development is kind of what a lot of these big guys call their M&A people, if they don't call them M&A people. They might also call it investments or strategic acquisitions or something else. So then I'm going to look at one of the things here, and I see there's this company called Crunchbase. I would highly recommend that you all sign up for a free trial for Crunchbase. And the website is crunchbase.com, Roland's affiliate. No, never mind. I get nothing from it. Crunchbase is a great resource, though. What they do for you is they kind of do the work to make it easier. So now if I go to Crunchbase and I put in Deloitte, you can see that it tells me that they had 39 acquisitions. And then it lists every single one of them, tells me when it happened, and then I can click on any of those companies and it'll tell me about the company. So now I'm going to get an idea, because I didn't remember. Vinny's like, I don't know what to buy. I said, well, let's look at what the smart big people are buying. So now we're looking at that through this list, and we see we've got one that's agile methods for problems. That doesn't tell me a lot, but it does tell me that it's in the category of apps and CRM, so they're buying companies that are in those kinds of areas. Then they bought Terrace, which helps companies and their managers plan change. Okay, that's still a little vague. But another one now that's doing CRM and Salesforce integration. So maybe you should think about integration companies, Vinny, right? And then another one, Well Placed Cactus, best name of a company that I saw on this list, is it's actually an entertainment studio. So they're doing this probably to do content, right? So that might be something interesting for him to think about. Here's another one that does computer upgraded systems, and another one that does tax, risk, and M&A advisory. Another one that does networking, so software networking and cloud solutions. Another one that's a managed security service provider. So now we've got all these categories that we didn't really know about before, and presumably Deloitte is sophisticated enough to actually maybe put some research into the kinds of companies that make sense to help them grow the fastest. They're a pretty good company. So let's just check them out, and that might be a path for us. It might not, but that's a good place to start. Also, on Crunchbase, they will list investments. So while they told us there were 39 acquisitions, there were also 5 investments. Larger companies frequently will make an investment in smaller companies that they later intend to buy for either to keep competitors away from them, so that's a good indication that I might like that industry, or just to kind of put a toe in so that they can see how they're doing and they're like first up to do the acquisition later. So I would also look at investments. And you can see that there were several investments here as well. Okay, so you keep going through this until you find a whole bunch of different categories of companies to buy. I'm not yet care about specific targets. I only want to know categories right now. The other thing that I suggested to him was that he look at Intuit, because Intuit is kind of an accounting software type thing, right? They've got QuickBooks, and so they're not terribly dissimilar from him. So I said, why don't you take a look at Intuit? And Intuit had quite a few acquisitions as well. So it made sense to look at some of the acquisitions that they'd done, which included payroll services and cloud services and things like that. So that gave him a lot of ideas. So I'd like for you to get into groups of 3 right now. And I would like for you to find your acquisition categories based on what we did. So remember, what you're going to do is you're going to Google your industry, pick your industry, whatever it is. Could be legal, could be, anything that you want. And then let's find who's buying what in that industry so that we can make a list of the types of companies that you might be interested in buying. So we did that exercise, and now I just want to kind of point out a couple other ways to find deals. One is to check EDGAR. EDGAR is the United States Securities and Exchange Commission's electronic data electronic data gathering and retrieval service. That's their fancy, funny acronym that they were able to make up for that. EDGAR is free and it is online. So if you also go there, if it's a public company that you're looking at, you can go to it's either search EDGAR, sec.gov EDGAR, but I just put in Google EDGAR. So this is what the site looks like, and what you want to do here is just search for the company name. So I mentioned that I told Vinny with accounting also to put in Intuit, since they actually are kind of an accounting-oriented thing. And so we put in Intuit, and then a whole bunch of Intuits come up, but this one is the prepackaged software that we're interested in. And then, true to government efficiency, if you put in 10K for a 10K, that's the annual filing, then nothing will be found. But if you put in 10-K, because that's what they call it, then all of the 10Ks will come up, okay? So be very literal when you're searching this site. But then, as you can see, all these 10Ks come up for the different years. And so I just click on the most recent one, which was for the fiscal year ended July 31st, 2019. And this is Intuit's annual report. Now, annual reports and 10Ks have 4 major parts. The first part talks about the business. That's just kind of a general overview of the business. So if you want to see what they, kind of what their mission statement of the business is, you can see there. Then it talks about risk factors. And the risk factors can actually be interesting because they are required to say everything that would be a risk that would be material to an investor in making a decision to invest, and not omit to state anything that would be material. Gene knows this well. He's like, I know all of this. And some of those things might be very informing to you. So I always read the risk factors because I think that they will indicate things, threats, opportunities, weaknesses that might exist in that company, which might be opportunities for you. Then the third section is the financial statements, and the interesting thing about looking at publicly available financials is that if you want to kind of get a benchmark of where they are in terms of like, what is the percentage of their payroll to sales? What is their percentage of ad spend to revenue? Those kinds of things. You can do that math and find out those numbers. You can also get that through tools like BizMiner, which I'll talk about in a minute. But you can do it yourself. And then, to me, the most interesting section is the MD&A. That's the management discussion and analysis, where management is actually talking about what they think about the company and where things are going and that sort of stuff. You can also look in there and see what acquisitions they made in the 10K, and see what acquisitions they made over the last year. So that's another place to look to get ideas of things to buy, things that might be opportunities. And you can see here, this is the section, business risk factors, etc., and financial data, and so on.